All right, let's talk. I believe this is now what our sixth or so video in this series. Let's talk about as many of these tools as we can, just to kind of section off what we're going to discuss. But we overlooked the gradient transform tool earlier and the text tool over here. So let's work in both of those as well. And let's start with the text tool. I've got you can look this up online, a font called Lightsider. I'm going to put this on a new layer over here, and let's just continue to shamelessly plug the website as much as possible, cartoonsmart.com. And you can see that obviously we probably want to fill this in with some color, right? One thing I'd want to do too with this text is deal with kind of the placement and size of some of the elements. And instead of going through here and bumping up the size like this, which is actually an option, most likely what I would end up doing is just breaking this apart, which we're going to have to do anyway. So go over here to Modify Break Apart. And you notice that the first time you do this, it gives you basically it's like you wrote each text out separately with the text tool. But what we're going to do is we're going to break it apart one more time. And there we go, break it apart. Nice little hotkey for that if you wanted to use it. And now I'm just going to make this one a bit bigger, okay? And I'd probably use my hotkey for the scale and rotate option over here if you guys already forgot about where that's at. Shape, it's over here under transform, which makes a lot more sense. Scale and rotate. And so I would just be sure that the kind of the S and the C in the text had a little bit more emphasis to it, especially if it's going to be one word like this. And I would probably go and just go through here and move some of these elements around. Now this would probably be better if I'd done it at the same time the first time I broke it apart, not the second. That way I don't get a case where I'm kind of selecting, separate units of the same letter. But yeah, all right, so that's close enough. Now, yeah, let's get some, we're going to fill this thing in. Obviously what we could do here is we could take the paint bucket and go through here and just kind of drop in the color on each one of these. It's not that exciting, and you don't really need to watch tutorials on how to use the paint bucket tool, right? But what I would probably do is grab the black, okay, or actually I guess probably just grab the yellow that I just made. That's a little bit easier. And I'm gonna hold down the shift key, so I'm selecting each one of these, so you can see if I were to cut them off, get them all. And I would move this to a separate layer. So I'm going to cut all those off of there. I'm going to paste in place. Okay, don't forget you can use the hotkey for that. Paste in place. So now what I've got is I'm just going to lock up everything else that I'm not using. I've got the black part on its own layer. You can see I can just select that, select all the black part by just clicking this keyframe over here, or I can select all the white part by selecting that keyframe. And let's do this. Let's play around with well, just to be sure we do talk about all these tools in here. The eraser tool, right? We can just erase through here. That's not that fun. And you know what's actually surprising about that did it manage to go through all the layers? What happened there? Looked like it did. I'm surprised it did that. Well, okay. There you go. Okay, ink bottle tool. Here's another one we could look at real quick. So if I wanted to re-outline the yellow part in here with a new color, I could do that. So let's go, and actually usually a lighter color would look good for something like this. So let's take the ink bottle tool, and I'm actually, even though it shows me on this layer over here with the black, I'm actually sampling. I'm actually putting the text around the yellow. So now I've switched it over here. At least I thought that's what it was doing. It should be. And yeah, this is a nice way to kind of emphasize some of your text. So let's keep doing that. Okay. Yep. This gives it a nice little highlight. After I'd done something like that, I'd probably go back and look at the original black layer over here and decide it's not thick enough. So, we did talk about this before, but you can always go over here to your shape and expand the fill out. So I probably wouldn't go 10, but maybe I'd go 3 on it. So it's just now that interior yellow part that I made it's not kind of competing with that black outside part. A lot of times too with the text like this, I'd probably copy and paste in place the background color behind it, and then just kind of give it a little bit more of a three-dimensional look to it. Just bump it out a little bit. And, if you weren't sure that you wanted to do that, you want to kind of play around, like maybe I will, maybe I won't, you can always hit F8 on this. Okay, so you just call this backing of text, right? And then that way you keep this as a separate unit. Okay, so you can just copy and paste this now, and then just kind of slightly move it around. So now you've got two of them back there. But I see no problem at all doing that, right? So that's another option. So just keep in mind that, going forward, this layer right here actually has a couple symbols on it. And all right, let's see. Now let's do this. Let's go and just kind of select across here. If we wanted, we could just make this just a different color. One nice thing about doing that is doing that with the yellow that already exists as the that ink bottle that we used. It's not going to get touched by us messing around with the fill. So you'll notice that when I did that, it, even though it was actually the same color anyway, actually it's a little bit different. It didn't touch that ink layer, or just basically the outlines at all. It didn't mess with that. Okay, so that stayed in there. And let's see, to maybe kind of prove it a little bit more, I could make this something like red. Oops. Oh, well, actually, sorry. In this case, what I just did affect that because I was playing around with the stroke color. Okay, so that's how it kind of keeps those two separate. So yeah, maybe at the top part, what I'd want to do is make that a little bit more white, and then if we zoom in, you could see what's going on with that. So it's that's an option. And let's see, if you wanted, you could also make some of this a gradient as well. So let's go zoom in. What I'll do is I'll select just that darker yellow part. Okay, and even though you don't have to do this, what I would probably do is pull it off of this layer. Okay, so I'm just going to yank it off and then just make a new layer between them. That in itself looks kind of cool though. But so I'd put that back down, paste it back in place again. And the only reason I do this is a lot of times when you're messing around with gradients, you deselect things to kind of see what it looks like, and then you have to select it again. And it's just far easier to go and select things via just that layer, so just hit the keyframe and it's got everything selected, right? So anyway, let's go over here to our color, and we're going to set probably a linear gradient for this, not a radial one. And the reason I do a linear one is I'm going to do just kind of a smooth fade from the bottom of it up to that middle part right there. But you can see how it initially put the gradient in is it treated each one of these letters as a separate kind of unit. At times you do want that. At this moment I don't. So I'm going to grab the paint bucket tool, and I'm just going to toggle off lock fill, and you can see I'm going to paint it back in there. Okay, so with everything still selected, I just painted back in, and this time around it treated it like one unit, so from black to white over here. And now I can start coloring this. So let's go with like kind of a darker red, and then I'll make this one kind of back to that original orange again. And then if I wanted to change the placement of this, I can hit F, or I can just go over here to the gradient transform tool inside of here. So it's this kind of hidden sub tool. And then when you do that, you'll notice that you just basically have to click anywhere in the gradient. It adds this, what looks like a little pivot point, kind of a center point, and then these handles over here, really just one handle that makes you be able to slide it back like that or squish it in. And then I can also rotate as well. So do something like that in there. Okay, and actually, if you were gonna do this, I'd probably do the opposite, something like that. So then it gives it kind of this neat little, almost metallic effect to it. Now, what tools have we not talked about over here in this little section? All right, the eyedropper tool. Well, this is an obvious one. So I just click over here. It samples that. Click over here. I'm actually back to sampling the gradient again. If you did want to switch to a radial gradient, I would say, well, here, we can just do it real quick. So make this be a radial gradient. Main thing you'll notice is that you get some different options when you have the gradient transform tool selected. So this still moves it around the center point, but you can increase or decrease the size of it. So, you know, in a case like this, you might want to reverse these. Let's see. So then you get kind of like almost like an 8-ball type effect or cube or pool ball type effect on this thing, right? And then let's see, is there anything else over here? Yeah, you can still rotate it as well. Just doesn't do much, does it? So there you go, got a nice little sphere. Okay, what else do we got to talk about? All right, let me grab the ink bottle tool, and I'm going to put a stroke around this. You can adjust the width of strokes. This is kind of a new option, but so you can see this gives you some ability to kind of taper it after you've put it on there. Now, keep in mind, too, I'm just going to step back a little bit. You can also do that to some extent over here with the by adjusting the, not the style, but the width of it. So, for example, here, so you can see, oops. So basically, I did a little bit of that over there as well. Not sure what happens if you do this, though. Let's see. Let's say, let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. Yeah, so that's actually pretty nice. What I was thinking is I wouldn't taper it down that much, as it did. So anyway, that's okay. Probably make it a little bit over here. Do the tapering more toward the top. So I got kind of a nice little backing for the logo, right? Do something like this. It's not too bad. And is there anything else inside of here? Yeah, ink bottle, paint bucket, did that. So yeah, if you ever need to fill in or put a stroke around a shape after the fact, that's where your ink bottle comes in. Oh, and of course the bone tool. I'm not a big fan of inverse kinematics in Adobe Animate, but well, that's as Maz from Star Wars would say, that is a story for a different time. It definitely deserves a video of its own to play around with. So yeah, we'll break here.